Have you ever stood in a crowded room, a question burning in your mind, but you hesitated, afraid it might sound foolish? Maybe you imagined people snickering behind their hands or exchanging knowing glances, silently judging you as clueless. It's a vulnerable moment, that split second where fear of looking less than grips you, holding your voice hostage. But here's a secret that might shift how you see those moments. If you're wondering something, chances are most people in that room are too. They're just too afraid to raise their hand, too worried about their image to admit they don't know. When you summon the courage to ask that so-called stupid question, something remarkable happens. Someone answers. The fog of confusion lifts and you're no longer stumbling in the dark. You've gained clarity, a small but powerful victory. You never have to ask that question again. You've grown not just in knowledge but in confidence, in your willingness to face the unknown and embrace the discomfort of not knowing. That moment of asking is like lighting a match in a pitch-black room. It's a spark, a tiny act of bravery that illuminates something new, revealing a path you didn't see before. And here's the thing. That same courage can be turned inward, toward the questions that really matter. What if you asked yourself a question just as bold, just as vulnerable, not about facts or trivia, but about you? About your life, your choices, the habits you've let slide, the truths you've dodged because they're too heavy to face. What's one thing you're doing that you know isn't right? Something that, if you were brutally honest with yourself, you'd admit is holding you back from the life you want to live. This isn't a casual thought experiment you do while scrolling on your phone or daydreaming in traffic. It's a moment of reckoning, a confrontation with your own heart. Picture yourself sitting on the edge of your bed late at night, the world quiet, your phone off, your defenses down. You're not playing games anymore. You're desperate for answers, tired of the cynicism, resentment, or emptiness that's been creeping into your soul. You whisper to yourself, what's one thing I'm doing wrong that I could fix, and would fix, if I had the guts to face it? That question is a spark, but it's also a mirror. It forces you to look at yourself, really look, and see the gaps between who you are and who you could be. It's not about chasing perfection or making grand, cinematic changes overnight. It's about honesty, raw and unflinching. If you sit with it, really sit with it, an answer will come. It might be uncomfortable, even painful. It might point to something small, like a habit of procrastination that's derailing your goals, or a tendency to say yes when you mean no, just to avoid rocking the boat. Or it might be something deeper, like a truth you've buried because facing it feels like standing at the edge of a cliff. Maybe you've been lying to someone you love or to yourself about what you really want from life. Maybe you've been hiding behind a mask, pretending to be someone you're not to avoid judgment. Maybe you've been avoiding responsibility, letting others carry your weight while you coast. Whatever it is, don't turn away. That answer is your starting point, the first step toward a life that feels more authentic, more purposeful, more you. The power of small changes, the beauty of this process is that transformation doesn't require you to append your entire life in one go. The answers you uncover often point to small things, micro habits, daily choices, or subtle patterns you've let slide. Don't dismiss them as trivial. These are the building blocks of real change. Think of your life like a backpack full of rocks. Each small change is like removing one rock. It lightens your load, makes the journey easier, and before long, you're moving faster, standing taller, breathing freer. Over time, those small shifts compound like interest in a bank account, building a life that's stronger, clearer, and more aligned with who you want to be. Let me share a story from my own life. A few years ago, I was stuck in a rut. I was wasting hours every day scrolling through social media, sucked into a vortex of curated lives, perfect vacations, perfect bodies, perfect careers. Every post I saw made me feel worse about myself, like I was falling behind in some invisible race. It wasn't just the time I was losing, it was my energy, my confidence, my sense of purpose. I'd spiral into comparison, feeling small and inadequate. So, I decided to make a small change. I set a timer, 15 minutes a day to check my feeds, then I'd put the phone down and do something that actually nourished me, like reading a book, going for a walk, or calling a friend. At first, it felt awkward, like I was missing out on something crucial. But within a week, I noticed a difference. My mind was clearer, I had more focus, more peace. That one small shift rippled outward. I started tackling other habits, making my bed every morning, drinking water instead of soda, writing down my goals for the day. Each change was tiny, but together they transformed how I felt about myself and my life. I wasn't just tweaking my routine, I was reclaiming my time, my energy, my sense of self. These micro improvements are powerful because they're doable. You don't need to run a marathon tomorrow or rewrite your entire personality. Maybe you realize you're always late to meetings and it's making you feel unreliable. Start by setting your alarm 10 minutes earlier and leaving a buffer for traffic. Or maybe you notice you're dodging tough conversations because you're afraid of conflict. Practice saying what you mean in one small interaction this week, kindly but firmly. Say no to a request that doesn't align with your priorities, or share an honest opinion with a friend instead of nodding along. These aren't earth-shattering moves, but they're real. They're on the ground, as I like to say, and they add up. Make enough of these changes, and you'll be stunned at how quickly your life starts to feel different, lighter, clearer, more purposeful. Here's another example. A friend of mine, Sarah, used to struggle with feeling overwhelmed by her to-do list. She'd start her day with good intentions but end up paralyzed by the sheer volume of tasks. One day, she decided to try something small. Every morning, she'd pick one thing to accomplish, no matter how small, and do it first. It could be answering an email, folding the laundry, or making a phone call she'd been dreading. That one completed task gave her a sense of momentum, a little win that carried her through the day. Over time, she built on that habit, tackling 2 tasks, then 3. Within a month, her overwhelm had faded, replaced by a quiet confidence. She wasn't just checking boxes. She was proving to herself that she could take control of her life one small step at a time. I've met people who live this way, and they are the ones who inspire me most. They're not perfect, but they're brutally honest with themselves. They don't waste energy trying to impress others with empty words or false personas. They speak their truth not to be abrasive, but because they know that's where real connection lies. Their lives are adventures, not because they're chasing thrills or fame, but because they're constantly learning, growing, and facing the unknown with courage. That's what happens when you align your actions with your values. You stop drifting through life, you start living it. The danger of living falsely. Here's a hard truth. If you're not speaking your truth, who's speaking for you? If you're shaping your words to manipulate, impress, or avoid conflict, you're not living your life. You're playing a role, like an actor reading someone else's script. Think about it. When you say something you don't believe just to get approval, a laugh, a nod, a fleeting sense of validation, who's in control? It's not you. It's the part of you that's trying to game the system to get what you think you want. But that's not freedom. That's a cage, and it's one you've built yourself. I remember a moment early in my career when I caught myself doing this. I was in a meeting, surrounded by colleagues, and someone asked my opinion on a project. I knew the plan was flawed, it was rushed, poorly thought out, and likely to fail. But instead of saying that, I nodded along, parroting what I thought the boss wanted to hear. I got the approval I was fishing for, but as I walked away, I felt hollow. It wasn't me who won that moment. It was a version of me I didn't even like, a version that prioritized being liked over being real. Over time, that kind of living erodes you. You start resenting others, calling them gullible for falling, for your act when really you're the one who's lost touch with your own heart. You're living the life of a manipulator, not a creator. That path leads to bitterness, cynicism, and a life that feels like it belongs to someone else. It's like the story of Pinocchio, a puppet who wants to be a real boy. When you live falsely, you're a puppet too, moving to the strings of others' expectations or your own fears. The question is, who's pulling those strings? Is it your need for approval, your fear of rejection? And what role are you playing? A people pleaser, a performer, a fraud? The tragedy isn't just that you're not being yourself, it's that you're missing out on the adventure of your own life. You're trading authenticity for a hollow version of success, and that's a lousy deal. Imagine living your entire life like that, crafting every word to please others, never saying what you truly believe. At the end, you might have the applause, the promotions, the likes, but whose life did you live? Not yours. You lived the life of the mask you wore, and that's a life robbed of meaning. There's a story I love about Colonel David Hackworth, a soldier who fought in Korea and Vietnam. His book, About Face, was a lifeline for me during my deployment. I'd read just a page or two before bed, and it was like he was speaking directly to my struggles. His stories weren't just about war, they were about leadership, resilience, and the courage to face hard truths. He wrote about moments when he had to make impossible decisions under pressure, when he had to stand up for what he believed was right, even when it cost him. One passage stuck with me. He described a time when he refused to follow an order he knew was wrong, even though it risked his career. That choice wasn't easy, but it defined him. Reading his words showed me you don't have to learn every lesson the hard way. Other people's experiences, distilled into books, can save you from life's toughest punches. One insight, one moment of clarity can make you infinitely wiser than you were before. It's like solving a riddle. Once you know the answer, you're never fooled by it again. Hackworth's book taught me how to lead under pressure, how to make decisions when the stakes were high, and how to stay true to myself even when the world felt chaotic. The gift of reading is like choosing your mentors. You can surround yourself with the greatest minds in history. People who have wrestled with the same questions you're facing, who have walked paths you can only imagine. Their books are a gift, a lifetime of wisdom packed into a few hundred pages. When I was in university, Shakespeare changed me. His words weren't just English, they were a labyrinth of meaning, dense with history, emotion, and insight. I'd sit with a passage, dictionary in hand, unraveling each word's roots, its echoes, its hidden layers. It was slow, sometimes frustrating, but it taught me to think deeply, to question, to see the world in layers. A single line from Hamlet, like to be or not to be, that is the question. It could take an hour to unpack, but that hour was never wasted. It was like mining for treasure. Each word held centuries of human experience, and every discovery made me richer. For example, take the word question in that famous line. It's not just about asking something. It's about grappling with existence itself, about weighing life against death, action against inaction. I'd trace its roots, finding it comes from the Latin quaere, meaning to seek or inquire. That opened a door. To question is to seek, to chase truth, to refuse to settle for easy answers. That practice didn't just make me a better reader, it made me a better thinker. It taught me to approach life with curiosity, to dig beneath the surface, to find meaning in complexity. That habit became a superpower later in life. In the SEAL teams, I'd get handed dense rules of engagement documents from some lawyer in Washington, D.C. They were written in legalese, designed to cover every possible scenario, but they weren't always clear. Instead of skimming, I'd dissect them word by word to understand their true intent. What does proportional response mean in this context? How do I translate this for my team so they know exactly what to do under pressure? I'd pull out a dictionary, look up terms, and cross-reference them with real-world scenarios. That clarity saved lives. It gave me confidence to lead, and it all started with Shakespeare, with learning to love the complexity of words. Words are more than tools, they're ancient artifacts, carrying centuries of history, culture, and meaning. Every word lives in an ecosystem connected to other words shaped by its past. Take a word like courage. It comes from the Latin cor, meaning heart. To have courage is to act from the heart, to stand up even when you're afraid, or consider responsibility. From the Latin respondere, meaning to answer or pledge. When you take responsibility, you're answering a call, pledging to show up for yourself and others. When you understand that, you see yourself differently, you think in words, you communicate in words. The more you master them, the more you master your ability to navigate the world. Want to be competent, even dangerous in the best sense. Become articulate. There's no greater power than knowing what you believe and expressing it clearly. I once read a book called The Neuropsychology of Anxiety by Jeffrey Gray. It was a beast. Dense, scientific, with 1-800 references. It took me 6 months to get through, but it was like earning a degree in understanding fear and human behavior. Gray had spent 30 years researching, reading every study, synthesizing it into a single work. I got the distilled version in half a year. That's the gift of reading. You get to stand on the shoulders of giants, absorbing their hard-won wisdom without having to live through their struggles. Every book is a shortcut, a chance to learn from someone else's triumphs and mistakes. I'd open The Neuropsychology of Anxiety and find insights that helped me understand my own fears, my team's reactions under stress, even the way fear shapes decisions. It wasn't just academic. It was practical, life-changing. The adventure of truth, living truthfully, isn't just about words, it's about action. It's about taking responsibility for your mistakes, your potential, and your place in the world. If you want a life that matters, you need a goal, something worth striving for. Without it, you're adrift, chasing fleeting pleasures that leave you empty. I used to think the goal was to eliminate struggle. To get rich, get the car, get the life that looked perfect on the outside. I'd dream of a fancy house, a fast car, a life where everything was easy, but then I learned about gold medal depression. Olympians at the peak of their careers come home and feel lost. Why? Because the struggle, the training, the discipline, the pursuit gave their lives meaning. Without it, they're untethered, floating in a sea of emptiness. We're built for the climb, not the beach. A life of endless luxury sounds nice for about a week, but then it's just numbness. You need a challenge, a purpose, a hill to climb, and here's the thing, that hill should always be just out of reach. Not because you'll never get there, but because the pursuit shapes you. Every step makes you stronger, wiser, more capable. The highest goals, virtue, truth, love, are transcendent. They're not endpoints, they're horizons. You move toward them, and as you do, your life becomes richer, fuller, more abundant. But the truth comes with a cost. It demands humility. It means facing your flaws, your failures, the chaos you've let fester in your life. That's painful, especially at first. You might realize you've been hiding behind a persona, playing a role to avoid judgment. Maybe you've crafted a social media version of yourself, polished, perfect, untouchable. But it's not you. It's a mask, and it's heavy. Or maybe you've been avoiding responsibility, letting others carry your weight while you coast. Those realizations sting, but they're also the doorway to freedom. When you own your shortcomings, you stop being a puppet. You start writing your own story. I had a friend, Mark, who lived behind a mask for years. He was the life of the party, always smiling, always cracking jokes, always on. But late at night, he'd admit he felt like a fraud. He was terrified of letting people see his struggles, his doubts, his real self. One day, he decided to try something different. He started being honest, not in a dramatic way, but in small moments. He told a friend he was feeling overwhelmed instead of brushing it off. He admitted to his boss he needed help on a project instead of pretending he had it all together. Those small truths were terrifying at first, but they were also liberating. People didn't reject him, they respected him more. He wasn't just playing a role anymore, he was living his life, taking responsibility. Responsibility isn't a burden, it's a gift. It's what gives your life weight, meaning, purpose. Without it, you're just drifting, chasing fleeting highs that fade by morning. But when you take on a goal, whether it's caring for yourself, your family, or your community, you become someone who matters. You become someone who can make a difference. Think about the people you admire most. What do they have in common? Usually, it's that they take responsibility. They lead with courage, stand up for what's right, or quietly do the hard work no one else wants to touch. There's a woman in my neighborhood, Mrs. Carter, who's a perfect example. She's in her 70s, retired, but every morning she's out cleaning up litter in the park. She doesn't have to do it. No one's paying her, but she does it because she believes in making her community better. That's responsibility. That's purpose, and every time I see her, I'm reminded that taking responsibility isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up day after day for what matters. Start small. Fix the things you repeat every day, your morning routine, how you talk to people, how you spend your time. Those mundane habits make up half your life. Get them right, and you've already transformed your world. I remember a time when my room was a mess, papers everywhere, clothes on the floor, chaos. It wasn't just clutter, it was a reflection of my mind. I felt anxious, scattered, unable to focus, so I started small. I made my bed every morning. It took 2 minutes, but it was a signal to myself that I was in control. Then I tackled one corner of the room, then another. Within a week, my space felt different, and so did I. My anxiety eased, my thoughts were clearer. That's the power of small, deliberate actions. They ripple outward, changing everything. The discipline of freedom. Discipline isn't the opposite of freedom, it's the foundation of it. Think of a concert pianist. They spend thousands of hours practicing scales, mastering technique, submitting to grueling discipline. But what comes from that? The freedom to create music that moves people to tears. That's true for any meaningful pursuit. Discipline orders your potential, turning chaos into possibility. If you want to see what you're capable of, start where you are. If something in your life feels broken, your health, your relationships, your work, don't ignore it, fix it. Maybe it's as simple as drinking more water or calling your parents. Maybe it's harder, like admitting you've been dishonest with someone you love. Whatever it is, act. Each step you take builds momentum, and soon you're not just fixing problems, you're creating a life that excites you. I once worked with someone, James, who struggled with confidence. He'd shrink in meetings, afraid to speak up even though he had great ideas. I suggested he try one small thing, prepare one question or comment before every meeting, something he genuinely believed in, and share it. At first, he was terrified, his hands would shake, his voice would waver. But after a few weeks, he noticed people were listening, respecting his input. That small act of discipline, preparing and speaking up, gave him a new kind of freedom. He wasn't just participating, he was leading. By the end of the year, he was running meetings, pitching ideas, and inspiring others. All because he started with one small, disciplined step. The meaning of struggle, here's the heart of it, we're built to walk uphill. The struggle isn't something to avoid, it's something to embrace. Every positive emotion, joy, enthusiasm, pride comes from moving toward a goal. That's why the best goals are ones you can never fully reach. They keep you growing, keep you striving, keep you alive. If you aim for a life of ease, you'll end up aimless, depressed, like a child who never grows up. But if you aim for something bigger, something that demands your best, you'll find a life worth living. I used to think success meant eliminating struggle. I thought if I could just get the right job, the right house, the right partner, life would be smooth. I dream of a life where I could kick back, sip cocktails on a beach, and never worry again. But then I learned about gold medal depression. Olympians at the peak of their careers come home and feel lost. Why? Because the struggle, the training, the discipline, the pursuit gave their lives meaning. Without it, they're adrift, floating in a sea of emptiness. That's when I realized struggle isn't the enemy, it's the fuel. It's what makes us human. Think about it, every story we love, from ancient myths to modern movies, is about struggle. It's Odysseus battling storms to get home, or Frodo carrying the ring to Mordor. It's the underdog team fighting for the championship, or the single parent working 2 jobs to give their kids a better life. Struggle is what makes the story worth telling, and your life is a story too. The question is, what kind of story do you want to tell? One where you coasted, avoided the hard stuff, and ended up with regrets, or one where you faced the climb, took on the challenges, and became someone you're proud of? A call to action. So tonight, sit with yourself, ask the hard question, what's one thing I'm doing wrong that I could fix? Be honest, be brave. The answer might hurt, but it's also your map to the adventure you're meant for. You're not here to sleepwalk through life. You're here to live, to grow, to become someone who can carry the weight of responsibility and still stand tall. That's the journey, that's the life worth living. Start small, but start now. Make your bed, speak your truth in one conversation. Read a page of a book that challenges you, write down one goal and take one step toward it. These acts are your sword, your shield, your way forward. They're how you become dangerous, not in a destructive way, but in a way that makes you unstoppable, articulate, and alive. The world needs people who dare to live truthfully, who take on the uphill climb with courage and purpose. That person can be you. The adventure is waiting. Take it one step at a time. Maybe tomorrow you commit to 5 minutes of journaling, writing down what's bothering you and why. Maybe you call a friend you've been avoiding because you owe them an apology. Maybe you read a chapter of a book that pushes you to think differently. Each step is a brick in the foundation of a better life, and as you build, you'll find that the climb isn't just about reaching the top, it's about who you become along the way. You're not just fixing problems, you're forging a path to a life that's richer, deeper, and more meaningful than you ever imagined. So, go for it, embrace the struggle, ask the hard questions, live your truth. The world is waiting for the real you, not the mask, not the role, but the person you were born to be. That's your adventure, that's your life, and it's worth every step of the climb.